Parts of the Michigan response to the NCAA notice of allegations is out. We are going to get into it, the whole thing. We're going to go basically, not necessarily line by line, but we're going to go into the original report by Ross Tellinger at Yahoo and get into the thick of it and discuss what all it all means right here on this episode of Locked On Wolverines.
You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Wednesday. We are back and doing it. Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. I'm your man on the ground, Isaiah Hole, publisher of Wolverines Wire through USA Today Sports Media Group. I wasn't really around yesterday when this dropped, so I'm dealing with a lot on top of being sick, having a broken rib, all these things. I'm dealing with some life stuff, so I wasn't really around. I got a look at the article, aggregated it, and had to be on my way. I didn't sit down until 3 a.m. Or so until I finally started going on social media and saw the uproar from Buckeyes for some reason. Where's Isaiah Hole? Where's Isaiah Hole? Okay, so I bring that up here to begin. There is nothing in here that is anything different than what I've purported. I don't understand why every single report that says kind of something similar. And I got a text from a colleague right after this drop being like, yet another report that has everything that we know. Now, the difference here is I'm like, okay, well, this is Michigan's response at least. Okay. So let's have a little bit of disambiguation here as to everything that's said here. So it's a 137-page document that Yahoo managed to get a part of. And it says Michigan makes clear that it will not enter into a negotiated resolution with the NCAA over alleged wrongdoing, vigorously defending its former head coach, current head coach, several staff members, even Stallions, the low-level assistant who orchestrated one of the most elaborate sign stealing systems in college football history on the way of the school winning the 2023 national championship. The school purports that the sign stealing system offered minimal relevance to competition. We've plowed that ground a million times over, and was not credibly proven by NCAA investigators and should be treated as a minor violation. An NCAA spokesperson confirmed that the association received Michigan's response, but declined to provide additional details and refused to confirm the document that Yahoo Sports obtained. So that's kind of where we've been all along, right? It is, what is the NCAA proven? What was actually the violation? Some rival fans will say it's the sign stealing itself. Others will say it's the method. The method is obviously where he's being charged. I still contend that, essentially all of this is being brought down by, as Connor said, in sign stealer, by sending his mom to the Purdue game, right? That's essentially what they're alleging here. I think the good thing here is that Michigan is fighting back, and they're doing so in the way that I was led to believe they were going to do at the beginning. Keep in mind, with every tweet that I put out before, during in late October, early November 2023, or mid-November 2023, every tweet that I put out saying something like the Empire Strikes Back and all these things, winter is coming, whatever it was that I put out there, none of that was just my own volition. This is the issue with you rival fans that are jumping down my throat or stalking me or any of these things. You can sit there and say he needs to get better sources. If that certain person told you, even the rival fan, you might not like it, but you would believe it. That's the difference, right? That sometimes sources are wrong. I'm not even saying the sources are wrong. I don't believe that they are still. They're going to, that's where they're coming at and saying well, this doesn't say anything about Ohio State and it's a Michigan person that turned them in. Yeah, okay, that's still true. We haven't not said that a Michigan person was the whistleblowers. As a matter of fact, we've actually plowed that ground pretty thoroughly in 2023, that there was maybe up to 3 Michigan people that were involved in talking to the NCAA about some of these things, right? That is part of this here. So anyway, let's continue on. And yeah, I'm a little angry because I'm just, like I said, I'm dealing with some life stuff. So it's kind of really frustrating to just deal with, rival fans that don't understand that life is bigger than football and all of these things. Okay. So anyway, let's get to some of these things. The Sharon Moore deleted text. I saw a different rival school fan try to use this as the smoking gun. According to this, Sharon said, so I deleted all the information, all Connor on my personal phone. And it wasn't to hide anything. It was just that I was extremely angry of, the type of person that would do this to the program and these kids. They're like, oh, there's the smoking gun because he knew, like, he's angry about it. No, that doesn't mean anything. Michigan learned about this the same way that all of you did, through media reports. There was one person that was ahead of the Hydra, and that was Connor Stallions. He was the only one that knew. I knew things before Michigan did in a lot of ways, because they didn't ever, and I've really hit this hard. They didn't have like an exit interview. Like, okay, what happened? What did you do? What did you know? Right? Like, they never had that moment. They never did. Never. Not once. Okay. So Michigan and the coaches and everyone had to learn about it the same way. So that's that. But when you look at all these texts, none of them are anywhere close to damning in any way, shape, or form. So it's kind of just funny that you see people jumping down the throat of this whole scenario, right? In August 2022, Connor texted Sherrell Moore and says, a juicy report for you on CSU is in Colorado State, which Michigan opened the season against this year. Okay, he's an analyst that he's a sign stealer. He's allowed to be a sign stealer. That's not indicating anything. Stallions in 2022, October, Stallions sent Moore a single text about Michigan State's blitzing signals, rules, and tendencies. Michigan played Michigan State every year, and Michigan State never changed the signals. We talked about that literally in, it was either late October or early November 2022, okay? And November 2022, Stallions suggested to Moore that Michigan should change the signals ahead of the Ohio State game. Moore responded that he'll think about it, and Stallions responded that Nebraska is screwed, a reference to the fact that he could easily decipher the Husker schedule. See, now, here's the thing. Now you're adding commentary to this, right? Because Nebraska, like, you and I could have said Nebraska is screwed. They had fired their head coach in the middle of the season. They had an interim head coach, and they had Chubba Purdy as the quarterback against the team that was going to be a college football playoff team. Okay, so that's absurd. Perhaps the most interesting text, I continue reading, came in April 2023. Stallion sent a note to Moore that Central Michigan assistant coach Jake Costner, who, by the way, is not mentioned here as being a former Michigan assistant, planned to visit the facility to meet with Moore. Central Michigan opened the 2023 season with Michigan State, which Michigan regularly played. And ironically enough, Stallions is believed to have attended that game. Okay, so that's not the most interesting text. How many times do you hear any offseason, like, yeah, like this coach and this coach and this coach went and met up with Nick Saban to learn about X, Y, and Z. We've already talked about just how coaches all talk to each other. We've already talked also about how sign stealers all talk to each other. None of that is news. That's not even interesting. It's completely just absolutely asinine in my eyes. All right, let's move on to the next part, and we will do that here in just a moment. Before we do Super 959, Super 959, Super Bowl 59 is here. One game, two teams, endless possibilities, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action. With live betting all game long, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. The live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field, and the app is super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing that you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl, well, that's just icing on the cake. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official partner of Super Bowl 59. All right, so like I said, I've had, I'm a bit underslept. I'm not feeling well. All of these things. That's just transparency. Hence some of the vitriol too towards some of the rival fans that are just, I don't know. Here's what I have to say about it, and then we'll move on to this Connor stuff. I think, and I tweeted this to John Book over at Bucknuts. Bro, you need to get a life. Stop stalking me. Stop harassing me. It's just absurd. I don't hate you. If you needed a place to crash, whoops, I just hit my light. If you needed a place to crash, you needed clothing, any of those things, you need $50. Like, dude, I'm there for you, because there's more to life than this obsession that you have with me, with Michigan football, with this scenario. Okay. That goes for any of you Ohio State fans, right? Like, I don't hate you. I don't. And, I think that, like, and this isn't alone with Ohio State. You see it with any rivalry. I'm sure, plenty of the Ohio State people could point to, people in the Michigan media, people that are Michigan fringe, whatever. Some of you might think that that's where I'm at. I know a lot of you are watching and listening to this, which is why I'm addressing you directly here. I truly love you from the bottom of my heart. I'm sorry that you hate me or hate the information that I'm giving. My I've told everyone from the beginning, I do not like the attention that comes with a lot of this talk, especially just what ended up kind of being birthed from my relationship with Connor Stallions, even though no one knew about that at the time, right? But it is my goal to be the intermediary between the people that are, that have intel, that tell me, and I say it, right? So that's the thing. I'm not saying anything that no one's not telling me, right? I'm not just like, okay, I'm just going to go ahead and say something and hope that it's true. So the Ohio State involvement, potentially the Ryan Day's brother investigative firm, that's just what I was told. Okay. And it's still not true just because it's not in this. And I'm not saying it is true. I've never been saying it is true. I've never been saying it's not true. This is just what prominent people within the university have told me. Okay. But this whistleblower stuff, which is what we're about to get to here in a moment, that's still true. There's a reason why we talked about very lightly on, people inside the program. We talked about Alex Yud. No, I did not cover up a story, Ohio State fans. I know this has become a new thing that you like to say that I'm covering for pedophiles. None of that is true. But this is this is where we're going to transition a little bit back into the story, because it's Michigan is asking here in this. And let me see if I can find, I think this is a different article than the one I aggregated yesterday. But anyway, part of what Michigan's response was that it wants to know where the NCAA got this information. I saw some tweets late last night saying, like, it's hilarious that Michigan doesn't know. No, it knows. It wants the NCAA to come out and say where it got its information, because it's not going to look good for the NCAA in a couple of the people that have talked. And when I say have talked, I'm telling you, there are people that have talked, right? This isn't speculation. This is, I can't say I've had my eyes on it, but I've talked to people who have had their eyes on depositions within. So Michigan is well aware of the people who have talked, and it would not look good for the NCAA for multiple reasons if those names got out. So what Michigan is doing here, and this is the big part of fighting back, right? It isn't Michigan being like, oh, we don't know who talked, who was in our building. It was a whistleblower. Oh, we want to know. We're just sitting on our hands. No, Michigan is trying to force the NCAA to be forthright with that information, because they know. Michigan knows. They've known. There are names we have and names we haven't mentioned. There's one name I have not mentioned throughout all this. I'm not going to name it here, for reasons, good reasons, by the way. But there are one name that I have mentioned and one that I haven't mentioned, where if the NCAA reveals, oh, this was our source, it's going to look terrible for the NCAA. That is part of Michigan's fighting back in all of this. Okay, that is a big part of where they're like, we know what you know. Now, if we're going to get back to the accusations that are against me about this, the pushing the Ryan Day, third day narrative, all of that stuff. Again, none of this, there's still parts of the chain of custody and all of these things. And some of the things the NCAA has already said that isn't necessarily in this. Remember, they got a portion of the NOA response, right? This isn't that we got the 137 pages. This is a portion. I don't know if Michigan included this. I don't know if Michigan decided to fight that battle or not. All I know is the chain of custody with the spreadsheet and some of the things that I know that have been going on with the counter private investigator and all of these things. That all points to some Ohio State involvement. Ultimately, I don't care. Okay, this is just what I've been told. I don't care. For my regular watchers and listeners, I apologize for my bristly, my bristly tone here today. But ultimately, I none of these things. It's like two things can be true at once, right? I didn't think that necessarily Ohio State started it per se, but I think that because there is a private investigative firm that NCAA acknowledged that, or at least I believe the WAPO article that came out acknowledged that that's how the NCAA got a lot of its information. That's still a part of it, okay? But that doesn't mean that the first voice that came up was Ohio State, okay? That's what I'm saying. Now, if it's proven to be wrong that none of that happened, I mean, I'm not going to apologize. All I'm going to say is my sources, that's what they believed. Sorry. But I will apologize in that case of like, okay, if it has to be proven the other way. If it's proven to be wrong, then I'll say like, okay, well, I'm sorry that my sources misled me and we went down this rabbit hole. Okay. But nonetheless, like we've gone kind of down a tangent within the show itself. I don't think when I look at some of these things that they're all necessarily like the most interesting things. I think that a lot of these things are just very, I think that some of these things are just very like, okay, that's not necessarily the most salacious thing. And I don't think that anything in this should, if you're a Michigan fan, I think you should look at this with hope and positivity in the sense of Michigan's actually fighting back. I think that is the fact that Michigan is actually defending Stallions here is something that's long overdue. The fact that Michigan is not just capitulating, falling on the sword, all of those things. I think that is very worthy and worthwhile and all of those things that they should have been doing to begin with. And it's about time that they did that. Let me continue here in the story here. In its response, Michigan believes that the notice of allegations sent to the school in August makes numerous factually unsupported infractions, exaggerates aggravating factors, and ignores mitigating facts. The document says the school requests that the NCAA apply common sense and a commitment to fairness and treat the case not as serious level 1 infractions. The document details why many of the 11 allegations against the school, 6 of them deemed as level 1, are without merit or credible evidence. I do believe all that's to be true, right? Like a lot of this has been, what is it? Not mitigated, but litigated, rhymes, in the media. And a lot of it has just been like, hey, it's time to punish, because how can they? Like, I still have these arguments even with Michigan fans in my own family, because they're like, oh, how could Harbaugh not have known Stallions thing, right? Like, because all of this got litigated in the media compared to the way that Tennessee went down, or Arizona State, or some of these other places, Arizona basketball. I might be conflating two things here, but like all of these things kind of happened behind closed doors, whereas this was all litigated in the media. And that's not fair to Michigan. I do like that Michigan is at least trying to kind of fight back, because it means that it understands what's at stake reputationally. The problem is they will never, ever get their reputation back. And that's a shame, because that's where we go back to the very first show where we talked about this before Connor had ever even called me, is to say like, this was a purposeful, how did I put it back then? It's a political smear campaign. Once you take the toothpaste out the tube, it cannot be put back in. And that's really sad for Michigan, because Michigan can find itself exonerated here, which Michigan as an institution, I will continue to say, did nothing here. I still don't really believe, and this is one of the things that Clayton Sayfie often says, that he doesn't believe that the advanced scouting rule was even broken here, right? I think you can make the case with the MSU CMU game, but outside of that, I don't think, and I think that you can look at it and say, well, the scouting rule wasn't really broken. You can make an argument on those ends. A lot of this has happened with speculation and jump to conclusions, Matts, because we have not been presented with any of the evidence other than like, it just happened. This happened this way, bro. Trust me, believe me. And Michigan's never going to be able to repair that. Michigan is never going to be able to live past the cheating. I still can't do it. Allegations, right? Like the national championship in the eyes of some is always going to be marred. However, I will say this. It was always going to be marred in the eyes of Columbus. It didn't matter if Michigan was bringing out Make-A-Wish kids every game and donating money to charity and housing the homeless. They still would have looked at that as a marred national championship one way or another, because that's unfortunately the nature of our rivalries. Let's continue on. We've got more to talk about as far as this goes as we go through this document, and we will do so here in just a moment. All right, let's finish up here. We've still got plenty more to talk about. Part of the article here. While the school respects the secrecy of confidential sources, it says in the document, the NCAA can present evidence and infractions based only on information that can be attributed to individuals who are willing to be identified. That's accurate. Because you can't sit there and say like, well, this guy told us, right? Because they're also not presenting evidence. Well, this guy told us. That's why Michigan is trying to, again, they know. They are well aware who are the people who went to the NCAA. Like I said, one name we mentioned, one name we haven't. They're very well aware. I can tell you most in the Michigan media are aware of the name I haven't mentioned too. If you really think about it, you can figure it out. If you really think about it, you can figure it out. So I believe I mentioned the name Benedict Arnold before. You can, if you really think about it, you can figure it out. So, all right. I just want to see where we left off here. A hearing before the Committee on Fractions is likely to happen over the coming weeks as the school and association enter what could be a lengthy fight similar to the one that Tennessee waged against the NCAA in 2023 over recruiting violations. Again, it mentions Tennessee didn't get a postseason ban, didn't get vacated wins. Again, Michigan's not getting this proverbial hammer dropped on them. I don't understand why, like, if you read this whole article, this entire thing, how anyone can come away and thinking that anything's changed in the status quo of what this fight is, other than Michigan's not going to let the NCAA run roughshod over them. That's it. That's the only change. Like, we've told you back in 2023, a year and a half ago almost, that there were inside people. A lot of you that are of rival proclivities here have decided that you want to ignore those particular parts of the episodes because it does not fit with the narrative you want to be true. We talked about it on this show, okay? There are multiple people that were deposed by the NCAA. There's multiple ways that the NCAA got information. And there's multiple things that the NCAA has not been able to prove, right? And yet, still, the Big Ten suspended Jim Harbaugh while acknowledging we don't think Jim Harbaugh had knowledge, but at the same time, like, he's the head of the program, so we're going to punish him anyway. Michigan persevered and won anyway, okay? So, with all of that said, there's nothing here aside from maybe like a little elucidation on Sharon Moore's text, which none of which has any kind of smoking gun as much as Daily MSU wants to believe it to be the case. Or anything here that is that Ross Dellinger says is interesting. Perhaps the most interesting text came when Stallions told Sharon that Jay Costner, a former Michigan assistant who worked under Sharon Moore, by the way, wanted to meet with Sharon to help him plan for the season opener. Wow, that's the first time that's ever happened. Okay? There's nothing to any of these things. And the people who are reading it and saying like, oh, NCAA got him. What alternate universe are you living in? Because none of this says any of those things. None of these things are particularly damning. None of these things are anything other than what the status quo is. The only difference is Michigan is fighting back. Michigan has said that we're not going to take this laying down. We're going to fight for this. Okay. There was another part that I wanted to touch on here later. And some of this is information I was privy to. Another low-level Michigan staff member raised concerns about Stalions' time-stealing system and refused to be a part of it when Stalions wanted him to rent a car to scout a football game at Georgia, a team Michigan could have eventually played in the playoff, but a team not on the program schedule, making it permissible to scout them, according to Michigan's response. Accurate. The last part is accurate in terms of Jim Harbaugh could have showed up to that Georgia game and sat in the stands and had his phone out and, his binoculars and all these things. Fully accurate. Here's where I'm going to argue against. The staffer approached assistant coach Chris Partridge to inform him that he did not want to be part of Stalions' scheme. Partridge went to Stalions directly and said he told him. So that means that Partridge said he told Stalions, right? You're not using this kid in your single organization, stupid thing. So just like have him be a manager. Again, not a smoking gun, because Stalions, what do we know about him? Super organized. What did he show us in Sign Stealer? He's super organized. He's got a manifesto. He's got all of the signs out there. That doesn't mean Partridge was aware of any kind of impropriety. All he's saying, and by the way, this is the point that I was privy to. These two things were on, it is kind of Ross Dellinger getting a jump to conclusions, Matt, because I was told by people who have read these reports that the NCAA has and this NOA response, it wasn't like this and then this. This is one's on like page, like say like 25 and the other one's on like page 120. Okay. It was more of, well, okay, we're going to put these two things together to make it like these are one situation when these are two different situations that were being purported here. Okay. So that's the best I can give you as far as that's concerned. So, outside of that, you have the stupid Brett Bielema coming after Jim Harbaugh saying, of course you ran to the NFL. Brett Bielema, you would have loved to have gotten double pay and go and coach in the higher league and get a chance to coach for a Super Bowl. Like, I don't understand why all of these coaches, Matt Rule, like we talked about yesterday, or Brett Bielema, why they beclown themselves with some of these ridiculous narratives, right? Like as if Jim Harbaugh going to the NFL was a step down and that getting double the pay to do so is like running away. How many times have you been offered a job promotion and double pay and you said, nah, I'm going to stick with it for reasons? It's pretty rare in the world today. So anyway, and Harbaugh actually had done that for several years. But it is what it is. All right. That's all I've got today. Thanks for sticking with the bristliness, the frustration, the anger. Again, if you're a rival fan, if you're a Michigan fan, I don't care who you are. I love you from the bottom of my heart. Even if you hate me, even if you're angry with me, even if you call me names, I'm sorry you feel that way. I'm only here to tell you what people have told me, as we've learned through the saga, that I was talking to someone that no one else was talking to, and therefore I had some information that no one else had. Such is the case for some of these others that I am saying that this person told me this and this person told me that. Okay. So it is what it is. Take issue with them. I'm not going to tell you names, but take issue with them. Don't take issue with me. And you do the same if you were, and if you're in the Ohio State media, if you were hearing from, Ohio State, brass, whether it was in the football program, the AD, the university, or whatever, you'd be doing exactly the same. Okay. That's all I got to say to that. Anyway, that'll do it for us today. Tomorrow we'll mailbag it and we'll go from there. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you soon. Peace.